Welcome, everyone. So, today we're diving into a really fascinating explainer. In this tajziya, or analysis, we are unpacking a short, highly cinematic documentary script titled Sood is Haram in Islam, or, for those unfamiliar with the term, Interest is Forbidden in Islam. We're going to break down exactly how this piece uses visual storytelling, emotional contrast, and deep theological texts to construct its narrative. We'll be looking impartially at the structural choices the creators made to frame one of the most hotly debated topics in global economics, but through a strictly religious lens. Let's get right into it.
The source material doesn't waste any time. It hits us with this opening hook straight out of scene 1 asking, is all increasing wealth actually blessed? It's honestly a brilliant way to instantly draw us into the core ethical tension of the whole piece. Right off the bat, the script separates the sheer, literal volume of money from the idea of spiritual or ethical value.
Okay, let's dive into this. The documentary sets up a striking visual dichotomy right away to answer that opening question. On one side, we've got Mao, an abundance of wealth. Imagine a wealthy businessman sitting in this luxurious office late at night, totally surrounded by money, contracts, and a calculator. But right outside his window, we see the absolute contrast, a poor family walking through the freezing rain. This imagery physically separates the accumulation of capital from barakat, or true blessing. It establishes a heavy mood where financial success, if it's disconnected from human empathy, is shown as cold and isolating.
Which brings us to Section 1, Allah ka Faizla, or the divine decree on interest. To prep us for the serious theological ruling that's about to drop, the documentary totally shifts the atmosphere. The screen goes dark, we move completely away from that cold, clinical, modern office and into something timeless. The imagery shifts to slow-moving clouds and an old Quran resting on a wooden stand, bathed in this really soft, warm light. It's a transition purposefully designed to ground the upcoming arguments, not in human opinion, but in ultimate divine authority.
And here's the core scriptural evidence cited by the source. Quote, Allah permitted trade and forbade interest. This is drawn straight from the Quran, chapter 2, verse 275. The documentary places this text squarely in focus, letting the sheer weight of the decree just sink in. There's zero ambiguity here. Trade is permitted, but it's contrasted directly against interest, which is absolutely forbidden. This sets the baseline for the entire argument.
So the crucial point is how the voiceover frames this. The script explicitly states that Islam categorizes interest not just as some bad financial habit or a risky decision. No, it's categorized as one of the most severe sins imaginable. The documentary elevates interest from a simple economic mechanism into a grave moral and spiritual violation. It's a vital structural choice because it instantly raises the stakes for everything else that follows.
Moving right along, we enter Section 2, Faida or Majburi, which translates to profit and helplessness. Now that the theological rule is established, the documentary deconstructs the reality of interest by defining it through human suffering. The voiceover points out that one person's profit often becomes the exact price of another person's helplessness, their majburi. The source material characterizes interest as purely exploitative. It's framed as this zero-sum game, where financial gain is inextricably linked to the direct exploitation of someone who is vulnerable and completely out of options.
To make this abstract concept tangible, the script builds a really powerful visual mini-narrative. We see a struggling man signing a loan agreement. Then abstract numbers just start growing rapidly all around him, symbolizing the aggressive, compounding nature of the debt. Finally, we watch his expression physically transform. He goes from the hopeful relief of securing the loan to this deep, crushing worry. It's an incredibly concise way to demonstrate the psychological anxiety of inescapable debt.
And that anxiety leads us directly to the climax of the narrative. Section 3, Ek Sakt Tarin Hukum, a severe warning.
The stage is set with these dramatic, almost haunting visuals of abandonment. We see an empty marketplace and an abandoned office. Remember that luxurious, busy office from the very first scene? Now it's totally deserted. Finally, heavy rain falls onto a contract clearly stamped with the word interest. The darkness and the rain are used here to visually manifest the destructive, isolating endgame of engaging in this practice.
Over these dark visuals, the script delivers its most severe warning yet, quoting Quran chapter 2, verse 279. Quote, if you do not desist, then consider it a declaration of war from Allah and His Messenger. The source frames the continuation of interest-based transactions not just as a sin, but as a literal declaration of war against the divine. It is the ultimate escalation. meant to hammer home the extreme gravity of the subject matter.
But, it doesn't just leave us in despair. We are guided into Section 4, Halal Karasta, the righteous path.
Here, the focus shifts to the resolution. The intense tension breaks through a visual contrast of choice and reward. We see that same struggling man from earlier, but now he takes physical action. He literally tears up the interest-based agreement. That's the choice. And the reward? The visual direction has him immediately walk out into bright sunlight, where he's warmly welcomed by his family. The script physically contrasts the dark, isolating rain of the contract with the bright, sunlit warmth of human connection and ethical choices.
And this brilliantly illustrates the voiceover's message. The script lays out 3 core lessons here. First, it reassures us that behind every forbidden earning, there is always a permitted halal path. Second, it acknowledges a tough reality. Leaving interest can be genuinely, truly difficult. But third, and most importantly, it promises divine substitution, that whatever is sacrificed for the sake of Allah will be replaced with something even better and halal. It's an argument perfectly structured to offer a clear off-ramp from the anxiety of debt.
The script then concludes with incredibly peaceful imagery. We see a beautiful sunrise over a mosque bathed in soft golden light, with people calmly walking toward it for prayer. Think about how perfectly that contrasts with the dark, rainy night and the isolated businessman from the very first scene. The visual journey moves entirely from dark isolation to sunlit community, and from financial anxiety straight into spiritual peace. Over this golden sunrise, the final voiceover delivers the central thesis of the entire documentary. Don't just look for increase in wealth, look for blessing. This beautifully bookends the opening dilemma we talked about at the start of our explainer. It completely resolves the tension between the sheer accumulation of numbers on a screen and the pursuit of true holistic peace.
Finally, the piece fades to a closing text caption. May Allah grant us all halal sustenance and protect us from the haram. Amen. It's a quiet, reflective end to a very emotionally and theologically intense script. And as we wrap up this explainer, it leaves us with a profound, universally relevant question to ponder, really regardless of our individual backgrounds. In our modern, hyper-connected economies, how do we as a society truly balance the relentless, everyday pursuit of wealth with our fundamental moral responsibilities to one another? Thank you so much for joining me today, and keep questioning the world around you.